In his essay, The Death of the Author, written in 1968, Roland Barthes questions the concept of authorship. For him, it is the text that speaks to the reader. He writes, "A text is made of multiple writings, drawn from many cultures and entering into relations of dialogue, parody, and contestation. But there is one place where this multiplicity is focused, and that place is the reader, not, as was hitherto said, the author." With this statement, he argues that we should treat the text not as something coming from a specific person, but as something that takes life according to how the reader interprets the writing. For Barth, it is the reader who holds the real potential to make discourse productive. The author ceases to matter for Barth because only in this way can the text be set free. For to have an author is to impose a limit on that text, to furnish it with a final signified to close the writing. For Barth, the text unity is not in its origin but in its destination, and only the reader can define it. Michel Foucault, in his essay What is an Author, written in 1969, also questions the role of the author in contemporary culture. Whereas Barth pointed out the necessity to shift our cultural attention from the author to the reader, Foucault concludes that the notion of supporting the death of the author actually have only renegotiated the concept of authorship. To prove this, Foucault examines two notions supporting contemporary discourse. The first is the concept of the work, which includes everything an author has written, and the second is the notion of writing, which during Foucault's time, and even to current times, pretends to function autonomously. Foucault goes on to claim that such autonomy is ideological in contemporary times, and he sets out to prove his point by defining the author function. Foucault considers the author function a cultural form used to control discourse. The author function is a complex web of discursive shifts that lead to the construction of the author. The author function becomes clear when Foucault relates it to Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud, two authors who created discourses following their names, Marxism and Freudianism, also known as psychoanalysis. Foucault reasons that both authors developed concepts that were evaluated by later generations and that such discourses can be changed, which is not necessarily true for the field of the natural sciences. In other words, discourse as developed by an author can be modified. While Foucault went further than Barth and explained the power dynamic supporting the author, he also agrees with Barth that one day the author or the author function for him will disappear. Barth and Foucault's theories of authorship cannot be assessed in relation to new media practice. New media practice is largely dependent on the reader, or user, as the participants are commonly called. This particular dynamic is an extension of sampling, which started during the early days of modernism with photography and music, as previously defined. Sampling allows for the death of the author and the author function to take effect once we enter late capitalism, because writing is no longer seen as something truly original, but as a complex act of resampling and reinterpreting material previously introduced. This is not innovative, but expected in new media. Acts of appropriation are also acts of sampling. Acts of citing pre-existing texts or cultural products are also forms of sampling. This is the reason why citations are so necessary in academic writing, and certainly is something that is closely monitored in other areas of culture, like the music industry, where sampling is carefully controlled by way of copyright law. Currently, the careful choices of pre-existing material made by authors in all fields are ambivalently revered. To be specific, once cut, copy, and paste is assimilated not only as a feature for the online user to write her own texts, but also to recycle and reuse pre-existing material, the user becomes more of an editor, a remixer. This is the case with a blogger, who often comments about pre-existing writing and news events, or simply reposts them as reblogs. Under a new context, the new media producer creates a composition that allegorizes its sources. This possibility of selecting and editing to develop a specific theme according to personal interest plays a key role in how the viewer or user will relate to the content. It also creates a collapse that historians have been critical of because of the inability by producers to keep a critical distance. These roles while redefining the concept of creativity and originality also developed new challenges for the media producer. As it becomes evident in this brief outline, sampling, while often associated with music, had its beginnings in visual culture. Today, sampling is essential in music culture, as well as all major fields of media. Sampling is one of the basic elements necessary for a remix to take effect in material reality. Thank you.